I want to welcome you to this special episode. This is the Retro Rogues Live Christmas Eve Extravaganza. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm already goofing this up because I was given a new title to throw out. But there you go. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. Again, I want to welcome you to this special episode, our Retro Rogues Live Christmas Eve Extravaganza. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. I've worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, such as Batman Incorporated, Justice League of America, and even Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And I've even worked on an upcoming video game that actually released a trailer that I'm still technically not allowed to talk about too much, so I can't really say much more than that. But there is a trailer out there. Hopefully they'll release me to talk more about that soon. But enough about that. I want to welcome back, as always, my great co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks who'll be watching or listening at home some of the things that you have worked on as a creative professional on this Christmas Eve Extravaganza special episode.
Well, I am very pleased to be on the Retro Rogues Live Christmas Eve Extravaganza. Dave and I both were talking backstage. We're both dragging really bad right now, so I'm trying to get the energy up so I can get through the show. Had a really long day. But I am the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions. I am also currently the executive producer of a film called Staycation, which has been filming on location all over California and all over the world via Zoom.
All right, very cool. All right,
and we have a special guest. The Rocketeer is here in the house celebrating Christmas Eve with all of us. And we've also got people in the Rogue Gallery already. We've got Jane in the house. She says, "Hey guys."
Hi, Mom.
Hello, Jane, and hello on this Christmas Eve. Hollywood Jackson's out there in YouTube, and he says, "Hi guys. Is it hand turkey time?" No, actually, it's not. We have something special for the Rogues Gallery tonight, an original creation. We've talked about the fact that Dave and I have been working on an original project. That's not exactly what we're doing tonight, but this is an original creation that we're doing. This is not a typical thing that we've, as far as an established character. This is a unique creation that Dave is going to conceive for us tonight. He's going to give birth to it tonight.
It's a lot of overly descriptive words that make me feel uncomfortable. But keep going.
We also have James in the house. He says, "Hey, look who's still alive, James! It's good to see you on this Christmas Eve, and I hope you're doing very well." Actually, one thing that I do know is because Christmas is on a Saturday this year, I know that there are quite a few businesses, especially like those who have like banking hours type of things. Like I think the banks are going to be closed tomorrow. But that's my understanding is like a lot of businesses, they are celebrating Christmas early, so to speak. They in other words, they have tomorrow off. So for some people, this kind of is like they're having two Christmas Eves in a way. You know what I mean? Like they're off tonight. And so they're probably already getting the eggnog out, maybe spiking it a little bit and enjoying themselves. Of course, a lot of other folks do still have to work tomorrow. And then, of course, there are folks that have to work on Christmas. I've been in that boat myself many times over the years. And I do want to get a kind of a somber note kind of out of the way. I do realize for some people the holidays are tough. One of the reasons I'm dragging is I actually went to a funeral earlier today. That's got to be really tough, for that family to be dealing with the loss so close to Christmas. And I know for a lot of people that happens, unfortunately there's tragedies on Christmas Day and things like that. And all sorts of other reasons where people have disconnects with their families, or they're just, they're not doing very well. They're homeless. So I wanted to say, keep that in mind. And if you're kind of in that boat and maybe you're a little bit depressed or whatever, you got those holiday blues, we're going to do our best to try to cheer you up. We're going to do our best to try to cheer you up today.
All right, there you go. Very cool. And yeah, also too, if you're in a position where you're doing a little bit, doing pretty good and you feel like you want to make a difference, this holiday season, think about a lot of the local charities, and the different ways in which maybe you can make a difference and either impact someone's life or impact a family's life. A lot of times they'll, when you buy your Christmas dinner, for example, like you can donate something that can help to go to like like a homeless shelter, or possibly to the local food bank, or even I think Toys for Tots is probably, we're right up against the 11th hour. But if you
Right.
still want to make a difference, there is still a way that you can. I know that several years ago, I had a client, because as a freelancer, it's really ironic. You're normally working on the holidays. And I had a client many years ago. I did an architectural rendering and a logo and a bunch of other stuff for her. And she was very, very thankful. And she actually gave me like a Christmas dinner, essentially, to thank me for, basically working essentially on Christmas. And I told her, I was like, well, we already have plans. I don't really need this. I said, but thank you. And so what I actually did is I talked to another friend of ours, and she went, oh, well, bring it to the church, come to the Christmas service, and we'll make sure it goes to a family that could use it. And so I took the entire Christmas dinner with me. It was there for the service with them at that church. And then they actually took that Christmas dinner and actually donated it to one of the families that was in need. And
That's
so
awesome.
There's a lot of different little ways that you can make a big, big impact on people this holiday season and actually make a difference in the world. So if you're in a position you can do that, consider it.
Yeah, and I know not everyone, sometimes because of circumstance, not everyone gets to be with their family on the holidays. You may live in a different state. Maybe you couldn't afford to go out there this year, that kind of a thing. There's also the pandemic craziness and all that kind of stuff that influences those kinds of decisions. So, we're going to try to have some fun tonight. James seems to be in the right spirit. He says he made gingerbread cookies and date nut bread. Next, have to make the cheesecakes. James, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. I wish I was there with you to do that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I've been actually on watching what I've been eating, and I've actually been trying to make time to work out and stuff. And I've actually lost a decent amount of weight. And actually, Christmas Day is the one day I've told myself I'm just going to have whatever I want, and I'm not going to continue to punish myself and make smart choices for that one day. And then after that, it's right back on it. So
I need to start punishing myself. I really do. I have a lot of weight that I need to lose. I am the heaviest I have ever been in my entire life right now. So I got to do something about that. I did join a gym, but funny thing is, you actually have to go to the gym in order to actually lose weight. I don't know if people realize that's kind of new to me. I thought you joined the gym and it just happens, but apparently you actually have to go and work out.
I was trying to do that. They had that challenge that was 100 push-up a day challenge, and I've made it to 60, and that's about where I'm at. And it's not easy; it's killing me. So there you go.
Yeah,
but got to do something. So I was just decided I was like, I'm just going to make that effort, and see if I can, I want. There's a lot of things going on, but I'm really hoping that, irregardless of what's going on, I'm really hoping that next year is going to be hopefully a better year for me. And so I'm trying to get it off on the right foot. So,
yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the same boat. And in a lot of ways, I'm in that same boat where, I'm kind of hoping that, for a little bit of a better year. Not to say that the previous year was the previous year was pretty bad. So, but I think a lot of people feel that way. And then, of course, there's also people right now that are probably enjoying themselves, having a good time, and that's fine too. It's there's the spectrum, right? People are where they're at, right?
Right.
So, James said, "You go there, Dave. Congrats."
Oh, thank you.
In terms of getting in shape, Mott's is in the house. He talks about the Christmas cheat day. Of course, for a lot of people, if you're dieting, Christmas is considered a cheat day. He said it's so hard to eat right during the holidays, and that is true. That is true for a lot of us. Of course, for some people, they have difficulty even getting a meal. So it's all relative, right? It's all relative. Yeah. Hey, Asia's in the house. It's good to see you again. She says, "Hello, darlings." It's good to see you, Asia. Always here to celebrate Christmas Eve with us on our Christmas Eve extravaganza,
Yeah.
And Hollywood says, "Ask our queen to punish the base god." My goodness, my goodness. What did I ever do to you, Hollywood?
All right.
So let's get right into this, because this is a new thing that you're doing for us tonight, and we've talked about this is actually where the format change is supposed to be going, folks. Is Dave and I have been working along with my partner at Bad Bob Productions, Robert McVeigh. We've been working together on a new project. We did take a little bit of a break because of the holidays, but this is actually kind of the intention of why Dave has been drawing things, is that we do want to show you these sort of new creations. And when Dave and I were kind of prepping all the way last week and trying to figure out what we're going to do for this episode, because we did realize it was Christmas Eve, and we said, hey, this is our Christmas episode, so we should do something Christmassy. And I think if I remember the way the conversation went, it was we were kind of like, well, I mean, just doing Santa, I mean, is that enough? Dave said, no, it's not enough. And so Dave, can you explain the character? Because the way you pitched the character was so awesome. I felt like I was like in the right, in a writer's room, and you were pitching the idea to me, and I was like, let's do this. So can you give the pitch to everyone of what this character is?
Yeah, so the idea was we were talking about it, and they always have, every year they have those Christmas specials, right? Where some person always saves Christmas, and it always seems like Santa or whoever or whatever the heck's going on, and then someone basically always seems to come in and basically essentially save Christmas. And so I told Eric, I said, but what about the idea if Santa Claus actually was given some powers in order to save Christmas, right? And we did talk a little bit about the old DC stories and stuff. And so I said, well, what if in order to save Christmas, what if for a period of time Santa Claus was granted the powers of Shazam,
Exactly,
or basically Captain Marvel, and what would that even look like? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do Santa Claus has basically been given the powers for one night of Shazam, aka Captain Marvel, for one night in order.
The original Captain Marvel.
The original, yeah. So yeah, so instead of the big red cheese, maybe the big red candy cane. That sounds kind of weird, but anyhow, you get the idea. So, and then there's been a lot of talk amongst my circle of friends about, and Eric knows this because I've already told him this because we were talking about it too. But we were talking about, well, what in the world would this character's name be? And so the one I kind of liked that I think is kind of interesting is Schizanta.
There we go.
Shazam and Santa, or Schizanta. It sounds like a soda from the 80s, doesn't it? Like Schizanta.
I like it.
Or some kind of weird medication, that you Schizanta is, blah 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 for whatever. Talk to your doctor about Schizanta. It sounds like that too. So anyhow.
James says, how very Hallmark Channel meets DC Marvel. I like that. That would be like our log line for the pitch. It's the Hallmark Channel meets DC Marvel. That's how we would explain it to the suits, to the execs at the studio about this concept.
And I am as always, I those of you who are here all the time, I'm a big animation fan. And I love the old Rankin Bass cartoons. So this is going to have a definitely an animated flair or style about it. You can kind of already see that and how I'm handling the proportions. But I just think that makes it even more fun. So,
yeah, James says Santa's drag name. And I don't think that's the direction that Dave's going to be going with this. So I really don't think that was the intention. And Hollywood, you said that I did say I needed to punish myself. You're right. But of course, the context that I was saying was that I need to lose some weight and get in the gym. That's what I really need to do. And for a lot of people, of course, with the New Year's, people get their New Year's resolutions. And that's one of the big ones, right? Is people say, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape, that kind of a thing. So I guess that's probably going to end up being mine. So I guess our next show is going to have to be like a year in review show. I just realized that, right? We're going to have to do something like that, something along those lines.
I guess so.
the sort of obligatory year in review, maybe our best and our worst and stuff like that. We've done that in the past on our show right before, our last show before New Year's Eve, which will be New Year's Eve. So
Yeah.
so it'll be our New Year's Eve extravaganza next week. Boy, you guys don't want to miss that. I mean, it's going to be like too much excitement going on here.
Yeah.
James had a thing earlier. He said, will there be caroling, a holiday floor show? James, this is the floor show. Okay, so this is a brand new original character that Dave Beatty is creating live for you, okay, on the air. I don't know. Does it get any better? I mean, come on. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. This is going to be something new. I've never seen it. I got the same pitch you all did, and this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. Now, I do have some like pop culture news. I have 2 articles that I thought we could also be talking about while Dave is doing the drawing, which already seems to be coming along quite nicely. I would like to say, Dave, it looks cool already. So I wanted to bring up a couple of things here. So let me get the headline here. So this, obviously last week, Dave actually did a live draw of Mary Jane, of MJ from Spider-Man. And the big reason we did that, of course, is because Spider-Man No Way Home was coming out. Well, now it has come out, and the numbers are in, and the numbers are fantastic. So this is from Deadline. It says Spider-Man No Way Home swings past 800 million global to become the #1 Hollywood title of 2021. Matrix Resurrections and Sing 2 expand overseas. This is the international box office. So it says Spidey has done it again, logging yet another milestone as he swings past 800 million global. Sony Marvel Spider-Man No Way Home now has a worldwide total of 813.9 million through Wednesday, pushing it past No Time to Die and making it the #3 movie of the year and the top Hollywood release. It says at the international box office, No Way Home pulled in 34.8 million into its web Wednesday, down just 10% from Tuesday. It says the overseas cum is now 457.4 million, still in 6th place overall for 2021. Now, I found this to be kind of fascinating. We've touched on this show a little bit, just a little bit. We don't do a lot of box office report on this show, but we do from time to time when the numbers are like this, because obviously in the sort of pandemic era, I mean, even for non-pandemic era, these numbers are spectacular. I mean, these are really good numbers, okay? But I think what's interesting is also, we're talking here specifically about the international box office. So I went to Box Office Mojo, and I decided to take a look. What is Spider-Man competing against? And a lot of people don't realize this. You heard the wording in that article where they kept saying Hollywood release. Did you hear that, Dave? They kept saying Hollywood.
Yeah,
release?
Hollywood, yeah.
So here's the #1 movie, the worldwide box office at this time. It's really, I think for a lot of people, this is very surprising. But we have talked about the fact that the Chinese box office looked like it was going to exceed the U.S. box office, basically, as my understanding, for the first time ever. And of course, a lot of that is because of the pandemic. So the #1 movie worldwide, almost making $1 billion, by the way. It's standing right now at $902 million and some change. It's called The Battle of Lake Changjin. And I'm curious, Dave, if you've heard of this before. Have you heard of this film?
No, I have not.
And so would you be surprised? I would imagine you would be, since you've heard of this, that what this movie is actually about is the Chinese intervention in the Korean War.
Hmm.
It's very interesting to me because one of the big parts of the story of Spider-Man No Way Home is that it doesn't have a Chinese release as of this time. So we're dealing with the pandemic, and then we're also dealing with the fact that it is not being released in China, which China is considered the second largest, the second largest market for films outside of North America. And it's very interesting to me that what China has done is basically they're saying we're just going to make our own movies. And in the case of this particular movie, I mean, I'm just gonna say it. It seems to me that this is very propaganda-ish. And who was the enemy of China in the Korean War? It was us. It was the United States. If you're an American, okay. So that is the number one movie worldwide, and essentially, I mean, it has been released in other markets, but essentially, that the lion's share of that money has come from the Chinese domestic box office. And at this point, it doesn't even look like Spider-Man is going to get a Chinese release. It's a big question mark whether that's going to happen or not. So I think that's really interesting. And the fact that that's what Spider-Man is competing with right now. In fact, it has, as I mentioned from the article, it has passed the closest U.S. releases, which was No Time to Die, and then right after that was F9, the Fast Saga, Fast and Furious 9. And what's interesting is right below that at number 6 is Detective Chinatown 3, another Chinese film that basically has been primarily primarily gotten its revenue only from the Chinese domestic market. Right below that, by the way, is Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which is at number 7. So it's really interesting to put these kinds of numbers in perspective. And in a lot of ways, Spider-Man: No Way Home does look like it very possibly could become number 1, but it does have a lot of ground still to cover. And of course, there is a lot of uncertainty right now with variants and things like that. So we don't know where it's going to go. But I just think it's very interesting the fact that China has developed their domestic box office to be sort of a juggernaut, because Hollywood was constantly chasing China, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they actually did rewrites. They actually added scenes. Like, for instance, I think it was, I can't remember which specific Iron Man it was, but they actually added scenes where basically that version of Iron Man in China actually had added scenes that specifically were made for the Chinese market, and we didn't see here. That's how much they were trying to appease the Chinese market. The Marvel films were very popular over there. In fact, I remember reading an article where there was a real response to the scene of the which of course is iconic, of when in the first Avengers movie when Thor hits Captain America's shield, which I think is one of the most awesome moments in that film, and one of the most awesome moments in the whole MCU. And they said how that translated very well, because the Chinese have a saying very similar to that saying that we have in the West of the immovable, gosh, I'm ruining the phrase, the immovable object, right? And the like what happens when a unstoppable force hits an immovable object.
Immovable object, yeah.
And the Chinese have a saying that's very similar to that, and it's very like a profound thing to them, and they got it immediately. They were like, "That's really cool," even though, of course, it's not like they have like tons of Marvel comics necessarily in China, but they understood that scene very well, even without necessarily having that context, and they just thought it was really cool. So it's kind of funny what's happened here, because the Chinese are kind of locking Hollywood out at this point, and yet Spider-Man: No Way Home has been able to defy the odds. Again, without having access to the Chinese market, and with all the uncertainty that's out there right now. I mean, these numbers, I mean, they're just fantastic. I mean, are you surprised, Dave, that Spider-Man: No Way Home has done this well?
I'm not too surprised that it's done as well as it has, because I did get a chance to see it and I thoroughly loved it. So I'm not too surprised. There's a lot of complaints sometimes with some of the films that, oh, it's too much fan service, or it's all this, they have like all these sort of disclaimers and qualifiers that they put on a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it should kind of be fan service. It should be fun. Like, you should be, excited to go, see the film. I thoroughly loved it. So I'm not surprised that it's doing incredibly well, because I think it's just a really great film. So
Yeah, and
it's
I still haven't seen it, and I really want to. I'm really hoping that I can see it very soon because I want to give people my impression of it, and also my anticipation continues to grow because I keep hearing from folks like Dave, people that I respect, and they are saying that this is a really good movie. They really enjoyed it, so I really do want to see it. I just haven't had the chance, unfortunately, just because of the way things have been going recently. But I really want to see it, and I want to see it very, very soon. Highly anticipated for me. But we've talked about the whole concept of fan service, Dave, and I think we both agree that the problem sometimes is fan service for fan service's sake, as opposed to when it's actually important to the story.
right.
Like that to me is the best fan service. The best fan service is you actually make the character relevant. Like, I'll give you a terrible example of fan service. Like, I hated what they did with Akbar in the Disney Wars, the trilogy. Well, I guess he didn't make it to the last one. Spoiler alert. So the thing that I hated, though, was in the very first of those films, in The Force Awakens. I mean, they basically made Akbar into a glorified radio operator. He was nothing. He was just there. He was just there. He just was in the room, and it was for those fanboys to be like, "Oh, cool, Akbar's here." No, it's not cool, because he wasn't Admiral Akbar anymore. He wasn't in charge. He wasn't. He didn't have any presence anymore. He was basically like a glorified radio operator. He just was like in the room, relaying a message. Like, literally, I think that's the only thing he did in that movie, and I was just so incensed by that. And that to me is an example of really bad and poor fan service. You just throw the character in there because certain fanboys are going to be like, oh, yay, they're in there. And they don't even care that the character has been totally degraded and it's completely irrelevant. You know what I mean, Dave?
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely not Spider-Man at all. So
Yeah. And
um
so I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't have a problem with fan service as long as it's important to the story and as long as the characters are treated with the proper respect,
yeah,
because these are characters that people really are invested in. That's what it really comes down to. I mean, we know from the trailers, some of the characters that are in there, like Hobgoblin and things like that. We know about, of course, Doc Ock, because he's in the trailers. And obviously you've seen it, but I'm just for people that even haven't seen it, like myself. We know he's in it, and these characters mean something to a lot of people. So
yeah.
the point is that the characters have to be treated with respect. They have to be treated with some sort of dignity. When it's just fan service, that's when I have the problem.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that is definitely not the case, in my opinion, with Spider-Man. So
Yeah, and that's what I've been hearing. So I'm trying to keep my expectations under control, because what always happens to me is if my expectations get too wild, I'm almost always disappointed, even if the film is good. Whereas if my expectations are low, I can end up enjoying a bad movie, because my
right.
expectations were so low. So I'm trying to keep myself in control here, because I do love Spidey. I am a huge Spidey fan. So I am looking forward to seeing this film. Robert McVeigh, he is in the house. Speak of the devil, Robert. We were talking about you a little bit earlier, about the project we've been working with. Myself and Dave, and he talks about his daughter Taylor, and he says Taylor says the movie rocks. And by the way, that's also interesting because Robert's daughter is in her teen years, so that kind of gives you the perspective of a teenage girl. So I think that's interesting. I'm not necessarily surprised, because I have I have daughters as well, and they do like Spidey, especially this version of Spidey. Um, so going back a little bit, Hollywood Jackson was talking about, will there be fire tonight? Of course there's fire, Hollywood. Don't you see Dave on fire right now with this drawing, with this original creation that he's giving to you for Christmas? Again, what else could you ask for? Now James says, I need to sing while you're drawing, Dave.
A lot of expectations for
and they want
tonight's
you,
episode.
and what they actually want you to draw about is Picard and Christmas. I'm surprised we didn't think about that. A Picard Christmas. And Mott's calls it Picard Claus. All right, so now the Rogues Gallery invented a new character for us. Maybe we'll do that next year. You know what I mean? Picard Claus,
Maybe we'll do Picard for New Year's. Picard can be the New Year's thing. I don't know what the hell that is, but
and Robert, I apologize. I got his daughters messed up. Robert, I'm tired. I had a long day. As I was telling folks earlier, I went to a funeral earlier today. I've had a long day. His daughter that he's talking about is actually 23. So again, but that is still like the perspective of a young woman. You know what I mean? So I think that's interesting. Although I'm not surprised, is what I'm trying to say, that that girls like Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Especially young girls like Spider-Man. They like the actor, I think. I'm just gonna say that. So they think he's cute. So that's what I've heard. That's what I've heard from my daughters. So. And of course, Hollywood just wants more Picard. He wants that Picardinator.
I know.
Maybe that's another one that actually that's another one we could maybe get into, the Picardinator. What do you think, Dave, on a future episode?
We need to do it just because Hollywood keeps asking for it, so we need to do it.
Of course, he also keeps asking for the turkey hand. So
that's true.
A little perspective there. And James says, I need cookies and milk to get some holiday energy. Yes, I do. I'm trying to keep it up there right now because it's been a long day. It really has. But I am happy to be here on the show. I'm happy to be able to celebrate Christmas Eve on our Christmas Eve extravaganza at the Retro Rogues Live. So I'm glad to be able to share that with all you folks. I did have another article that I thought was really interesting. In particular, I really thought that, Dave, that you would like this. In fact, I thought you liked it so much that I actually mentioned it to you, which for folks that don't know, Dave and I typically don't discuss everything that we're going to do. Like, we come up with articles and then we kind of surprise each other, so we get that reaction. We like to get that reaction. But when I saw this, I was like, geez, Dave, you got to be into this. So I was like, I already kind of mentioned it to him already. So this article is from Variety, and I was surprised by this because I hadn't heard anything about this until I saw this article. And it's dated yesterday, December 22nd. So it says, Michael Keaton to play Batman in Batgirl, starring Leslie Grace. It says Michael Keaton is dusting off his signature cape and cowl for Batgirl, the upcoming HBO Max superhero film. The actor is expected to reprise his role as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, the character he originated in Tim Burton's 1989 film. He will star alongside Leslie Grace, who's playing the lead role. Though plot details have been kept under wrap, the film centers on the heroine, whose real identity is Barbara Gordon, the daughter of Gotham Commissioner Jim Gordon. Warner Brothers declined to comment on Keaton's casting. As previously announced, J.K. Simmons is returning to portray Jim Gordon after first playing the character in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Brendan Fraser is playing the villainous Firefly, a sociopath with a passion for pyrotechnics. Batgirl doesn't have an exact release date, though the film is scheduled to debut on HBO Max in 2022. In the same year, Keaton will be seen as the Cape Crusader in the upcoming Warner Brothers adventure, The Flash. The film also features Ben Affleck as Batman, and starring Ezra Miller as the title hero, is slated to land in theaters on November 4th, 2022. So I thought this was really interesting because, first of all, I know of how excited Dave has been about Michael Keaton coming back and being in The Flash. And I think that's probably one of our most anticipated movies here on the Retros Rogues Live has been The Flash because of that, because Michael Keaton's going to be coming back. But I hadn't even heard of this Batgirl movie. I'm curious, Dave, if it had really been on your radar at all.
Well, I had heard some about it, but I didn't realize. I honestly didn't realize they were actually really going to seriously move forward with it. I do think we might have mentioned it on a previous episode, but probably just kind of in passing, because there wasn't really a lot of details about it at the time. And I am a big Keaton Batman fan, so I'm super excited for any more Keaton as Batman. So, and this also kind of jibes with something else we talked about before too, Eric, was all these rumors that um, Keaton was going to be sort of like the Nick Fury of the DC universe, and after he was in the Flash, and maybe have kind of a role in assembling a new Justice League. We had kind of mentioned that, I think, that on a previous episode, and this does seem to give some legitimacy to some of those rumors, possibly that maybe that is something they're actually thinking about doing, or they're already planning to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously we're kind of seeing some competition here, which of course DC and Marvel have always been in competition over very similar ideas and very similar characters, quite frankly, where they have literally like their own version of you could say this character or that, right?
Yeah.
But with the multiverse, right? Obviously, the multiverse is a big thing. We're seeing that in Spider-Man, right? And this is also going to come even to greater fruition in the Doctor Strange movie. That's why Doctor Strange is in the Spider-Man movie, right? Is to introduce this multiverse. And then DC is trying to do the same thing. Obviously, with the Flash movie, is they're trying to show their multiverse, right? And they also already did something similar on the CW shows where they did the Crisis event where they did have all this multiverse stuff going on. So now they're trying to do it with the movies, of course. So it is interesting what they're trying to accomplish here, and the idea, as you stated, which I hadn't really thought of it that way, that Michael Keaton could end up being sort of the glue that holds that their multiverse together in a lot of ways. Robert McVeigh says Keaton rocks. You're not going to get any argument here, from the Retro Rogues. Definitely big Michael Keaton fans, and definitely big Michael Keaton as Batman fans. I did see, Robert, you actually said Ben again, and I'm curious, Rob, because I don't think I've ever talked to you about this. If you like Batfleck, if you like Ben Affleck's Batman, I don't. I'm not a big fan of Ben Affleck's Batman. I think one of the big reasons, by the way, is just because I hated Batman versus Superman. Like, I hated that movie with a passion. And I think that kind of tainted me, because I'll tell you this. It's funny because I'm not a huge fan of Man of Steel. I hated Batman versus Superman. And I actually prefer the theatrical cut of Justice League over the Snyder cut. Okay, so I'm really weird for a lot of people out there, but I like Henry Cavill as Superman. I actually think he's a very good Superman. I just didn't like, some of the storylines and things like that in Man of Steel. I didn't like the execution on Batman versus Superman. And I actually prefer the theatrical version of the Justice League movie as opposed to the Snyder cut. But I think Henry Cavill is a great Superman. So I think there's something more when it comes to why I just don't think Ben Affleck is that great of a Batman. This is always a good fan debate, Dave. Where would you rate like Ben Affleck in terms of your Batman? Like what I don't know how many Batman are there at this point. It's like, what would you be like, say, your top three? Would Ben Affleck be in that?
Well, no, no. I did not hate Batfleck, but I'm sorry. Ben Affleck would not be in my top three Batman. just because that's a for me that's a really simple thing. I've talked before about my love of Batman Forever. My
That's a bold
Batman.
choice, and we've talked about what a bold
Yep,
choice that kind of is.
yep,
Yeah,
I love that
Val
movie.
Kilmer. Val
Yep,
Kilmer's Batman.
yep,
So for people that forget, yeah, people forget that Val Kilmer was Batman sometimes, because
yep,
he was only in the one movie.
yeah,
Um,
and I will argue that until I can't anymore. But yeah, my top three Batman. Um, so for starters, it's always tough for me to decide number one and number two because it changes. And basically, fighting it out for basically spot number one and spot number two is let me plug this in because it's about to die. Is gonna be where's the sorry everyone, I'm trying to find my stupid
no
power
problem.
cord here.
Just making sure that
So
the tablet doesn't die there. So.
yeah, so number one and number two, depending upon the day, is basically Adam West and Michael Keaton. So there's two, and my number three is Val Kilmer. So that's my top three. Kilmer is definitely three, but depending upon my mood and what's going on that day, it's either Adam West or it's Michael Keaton. And because there's such polar opposites, but they're both still Batman to me. You know, um, and I grew up with Adam West as Batman. I was lucky enough to actually get to meet Adam on multiple occasions. He was always very nice to me, and I just have always, he's been one of my childhood heroes since I was a kid. So that for me is part of the dilemma. But I love Keaton as Batman. So
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, Adam West is their definitive Batman, and then also for a lot of people, Michael Keaton is their definitive Batman. And I like how you put that, how they are almost kind of polar opposite versions of the same character, which is the neat thing about Batman. I wouldn't necessarily say he's my top three, but one of the ones I really like is Lego Batman. I love Lego Batman. I thought Lego Batman was awesome. I really like that version of Batman. I wouldn't necessarily put it in my top three, but I think he was really good. Rhett's in the house, and he says respect for Adam West, and of course we definitely have respect for Adam West. Growing up, it was in reruns, but growing up, that. Well, now that I think about it, though, for me, probably the Super Friends Batman was more definitive than Adam West when I was like a little kid, but I did like the Adam West version of Batman as well.
Well, the irony of that, though, Eric, is depending upon which version of Super Friends you're going to talk about, Adam West was the voice of Batman.
That's right. Still. It depends on the version. It does depend on the version because they did change the voice actors. Robert says Reeves, Keaton, and Adam West. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's kind of hard. I definitely put Christian Bale in the top three for me. One of the distinctions that I make, and actually Val's version is a really good one to talk about this. I do make the distinction, like for instance with Michael Keaton, I always felt that his Bruce Wayne kind of sucked, just because I didn't feel Michael Keaton was convincing as Bruce Wayne. I don't think he's good looking enough. I mean, I just don't. To me, Bruce Wayne is supposed to be like, he's supposed to be like Val Kilmer. You know what I mean? So he's supposed to be like that. And that was the one deficiency I had for Michael Keaton. Even though I loved the movie, I saw it when it came out. I saw it in the movie theater. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. But I always felt like he wasn't, quite right as Bruce Wayne. And people, I think, sometimes forget that. It's like he's not just Batman. The actor also has to be Bruce Wayne. It has to be a convincing playboy, a convincing, charismatic, handsome guy, and sort of a womanizer. That's kind of what I think of Bruce Wayne. And to me, Michael Keaton didn't come across very well as that. Val Kilmer, on the other hand, was much more convincing to me as Bruce Wayne. I mean, that's Bruce Wayne to me. You know, that he made a more Bruce Wayne. And I bring up Christian Bale because I felt Christian Bale could really pull off both. I felt that he was, an amazing Batman, and then he was also totally Bruce Wayne. To the point that he also did they gave him some really good material where they kind of showed him doing, crazy things just to show, how like no one's going to think Bruce Wayne is Batman because Bruce Wayne is like so irresponsible. You know what I mean? He's so like materialistic. He's kind of a douchebag, right? You know what I mean? So it's like he was very convincing in that regard, and that's why I definitely put Christian Bale in my top three. The other one that's really interesting to me, of course, is the '90s Batman animated series. That version of Batman to me is my Batman. That's my definitive Batman. I think that is the most Batman you can get for me. That's like the definitive Batman. The '90s Batman animated series Batman. Very definitive for me. And then like another one that I think is probably, if I'm going to have to choose with them, I would probably then also go. I probably would go with Michael Keaton, even with the deficiencies that I said, because I just thought it was so cool when I saw him in the theater the first time, and it did affect me. It did affect me. Rhett mentions Adam West was there in reruns, Justice League, and Scooby Doo. That Adam West was Adam West when they did Batman meet Scooby Doo.
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm curious, from the Rogues Gallery, if you folks want to weigh in on who you feel like your definitive Batman is, or your top three Batmen, if you will, But getting back to this story, I hadn't heard. I don't remember. You said maybe we talked about it, but I don't think I processed it because it took me by surprise that they were even making a Batgirl movie, and then it took me by surprise even more because it's going to be, I guess, an HBO Max exclusive. It sounds like it's not going to be released in the theater, which it's kind of interesting because, Warner Brothers had said, at least for this year, that anything they released, that was meant for the theater was going to also be released on HBO Max. Kind of a controversial decision in some respects. And, it's obviously it's not going to work in the reverse, right? So you got stuff that's going to just be HBO exclusive. They're not going to put it out in the theater as well. Apparently, that's what it sounds like anyway. So it's kind of weird to me that they're going to have this and they're not even going to try for a theatrical release with it. I think that's kind of interesting as well.
Well, there has been those rumors that that they're going to do. Oh, what is it? That they're gonna that the Snyderverse theoretically might be coming back in some form, and this would kind of support some of those rumors and those ideas.
Right. Yes. We have talked about that before. We definitely have talked about that on the show. Is that idea? I mean, I think we even were talking about when the Snyder Cut was coming out, that in a lot of ways it would be sort of like maybe Warner Brothers like feeler to see whether they wanted to do that or not, whether they wanted to really have, continue a Snyderverse,
Right.
And based on the success or lack thereof of the Snyder Cut, they would decide whether to go forward or not. At this point, I feel like they decided not to. Only HBO Max really knows the numbers of how well the Snyder Cut actually did. And it was a big event, and it definitely did get people talking. In fact, during our Streaming Wars coverage, Dave and I talked many times about the fact that for a lot of people, the Snyder Cut was it. Like this is why they wanted HBO Max, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if it really delivered in that regard. I think there was a lot of anticipation, but I don't know how much it delivered because I haven't heard about more sort of Snyderverse type stuff coming out. We've got the multiverse, which could very well include Snyderverse type stuff, right? Because they could do anything with the multiverse, but I haven't seen it. Jane mentions she has the Lego Batman Christmas ornament. That's very cool. Again, I really like that version of Batman. I just thought he was really fun, and I thought he was just, to me, he just felt like he was kind of like Batman. Like I like, I've okay for me, I've said this many times. Okay, for me, Batman's real personality is Batman. Bruce Wayne is a facade. I always like to say Bruce Wayne died in the alleyway with his parents. There is no Bruce Wayne. That's how I interpret the character. So he really is Batman. Bruce Wayne is just a facade. He isn't Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne died as a child with his parents. That's the way that I see the character. And what I really like is, like, remember with like Lego Batman, he's sitting there like at home, right? And he's got like his robe and everything, but he still has his mask on. You know what I mean? It's like he sits around in his house like that, you know? And that's kind of the way I picture Batman, because he's really is Batman. So even if he's relaxing, he's got the mask on because he's Batman, you know? He's not Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is just like, again, he's just a facade. He's just, that's his mask. The mask is Bruce Wayne. The real Batman is got the cow and everything. It's Batman. That's who he is. That defines him. James says HBO Max Legion of Superheroes equals Heroes Dave. Dave Legion Dave. So HBO Max Legion of Superheroes. I have not checked that out. So have you been into that, Dave?
I have been so incredibly busy, everyone. Like I am so out of touch with everything. I know that there's been talk about doing something with Legion of Superheroes, I think on HBO Max, but I am a little out of the loop, and I apologize. But I know that there's been discussions about doing something with Legion on HBO Max. I think that's what,
and that's something
James
that
to.
I wasn't aware of either. Actually, I hadn't heard of that they were trying to do something with Legion of Superheroes on HBO Max. But then again, like I said, I hadn't really heard about this Batgirl thing either. It took me by surprise, and I think the only reason I even heard about it is because, you know, I definitely do search a lot of Michael Keaton stuff, and it just kind of popped up when I was doing all these other searches. So, Jane mentions her top three, or actually her top two, she says, is Adam West and Michael Keaton. Those are her two favorite versions of Batman. And it's definitely, that's obviously an awesome choice. And, you know, I agree a lot with what Dave was saying, in the fact that those are kind of like those two bookends where it's like you have these two radically different versions of the character. But for many people, that is their definitive Batman, one or the other. You know, sometimes it depends on age or whatever, or maybe for some people they like, you know, a more a serious, you know, darker Batman, and some people like a lighter, more comical, fun Batman. And that's what's kind of neat about the characters. You can have so many different versions, and you have people that like both, which is kind of crazy. You would think a lot of people that, for instance, like the Michael Keaton might hate the Adam West version. You know what I mean? But it doesn't seem to turn out that way. A lot of people seem to be cool with the fact that you can have these radically different versions of the character, and it remains, to some extent, a definitive version of the character. I think that's what's this is one of the reasons I think Batman is so popular, right? Because Batman can be interpreted so many different ways. It's like everybody can have their own Batman, you know. So it's kind of, I think that's why the character is so popular. James mentions it's the Legion of Superheroes, a new animated series, not out yet, but it was leaked by Brian Michael Bendis. Okay, so we're talking about an animated series, and you're saying that it was leaked out there. So was this recently, James? That this was leaked information that they're going to be doing this? That's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder what the deal is with the leak. If it was an intentional leak, or somebody did actually just spill the beans for whatever reason. And that would be an interesting story right there. Maybe I have to look into this and see what's going on. Because sometimes leaks are intentional. You know, they're putting feelers out there. They're trying to get buzz going. And sometimes people try to sabotage things, right? That's sometimes what happens with leaks as well. So I would actually like to know a little bit more about this story. Asia says she wishes it would give Martian Manhunter his own series. I do believe Martian Manhunter is an underserved character. What do you think, Dave? What do you think about a Martian Manhunter series?
I totally agree with that. I've always liked Martian Manhunter ever since I saw that really cool artwork that went with his bio in the old Who's Who DC handbook stuff. I just saw that artwork, and I love the superpowers figure as a kid and the mini comic. Like, I just thought he was so amazing because he was basically Superman, but like alien. You know, like Superman's an alien, but this guy looks like an alien. And the fact that he was a shape changer, like, just Martian Manhunter is a really great character. And I would love to see them do more with him. I totally agree with Asia.
Do you also agree with me that he seems to be kind of an underserved DC
He
character in a lot of ways, as far as like media is concerned? You know,
as
outside of the
well.
comics.
Well, he's like, he was great in Justice League Unlimited, so he has had a very large role in Justice League Unlimited. Justice League Unlimited is part of, kind of that Batman animated
Yeah,
universe. Justice League Unlimited, absolutely fantastic version of Justice League. And he's been a character on Supergirl. And usually when he's on, I specifically, when I was watching Supergirl, I was watching it partially just for hopefully to see more of Martian Manhunter. So he has had some representation in other media, but I feel like Martian Manhunter is a character I think could definitely. Um, I feel like he's a character that could have much more appeal if they would give him a larger stage.
yeah, that's what I think too. And for me, most of my Martian Manhunter knowledge comes from Justice League, the Justice League cartoon, and Justice League Unlimited. That's kind of, I guess, would be my definitive Martian Manhunter, because I really didn't read a lot of the comics that he was in and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I know him from. I will say that I remember kind of making fun of the way he ended up kind of coming across in the Snyder cut. I wish I could remember. You can go, folks. You can go back. These things are all archived, and they're on the YouTube channel. And there were just some things in that I just thought were just like kind of hokey and just didn't quite work right with that version of Martian Manhunter. But I definitely think you could do more with the character. You know, it's kind of cool because in a lot of ways, you know, Martian Manhunter's kind of like in the same boat, you know, as Superman, right? It's kind of like, you know, he's that alien from a dying planet, but it's you know, literally Mars. It's right next door, so it's kind of cool. It's interesting. Asia mentions the only Batman I truly didn't care for was George Clooney. And the thing about George Clooney for me, Asia, is that again, I do make that distinction between, is this person a good Bruce Wayne? Is this person a good Batman? And I did feel like George Clooney totally fit the bill as Bruce Wayne. It totally fit the bill as Bruce Wayne, in my personal opinion. Did I think he was a good Batman? No. Did I think
No,
that was a
horrible
good movie?
Batman.
Absolutely not. In fact, the one thing that I actually liked was Uma Thurman. I thought she did a good job, but otherwise, I thought everybody did a terrible job in that movie. So, but to me, George Clooney was much more convincing than even, say, you know, Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne. And that might be something controversial to say to some fans, because I just feel strongly about that Michael Keaton's not a great Bruce Wayne. That's just the way that I personally feel. So James also put out the link. So this is a Screen Rant article about the Legion of Superheroes TV show. James, thank you for the link, and I definitely want to check into that. And that might be something that I can bring up next week. Maybe I can do some research on it and see what's going on there, and the source of the leak, and maybe some of the context and all that kind of stuff of what was going on there. Kavari is in the house. I don't think you've been on the show before, Kavari. Welcome. He said the Snyderverse is dead, and you know that's kind of why I feel right now. Is I kind of feel like, because I just haven't heard much, and it was so anticipated. Again, you know, even on this channel, we were talking about how it just felt like everybody was waiting for the Snyder cut when HBO Max first started. And it was like, you know, why else do people even have this? This is, of course, before they decided to put their movies, before Warner Brothers decided to put their movies on HBO Max. And I know a lot of people were just like, you know, why have this other than the fact that I'm waiting for the Snyder cut? But I just don't feel like, based on the reaction that I saw that Warner Brothers was that impressed. That's my take. Is I just don't think they were. I could be wrong, but I don't think they have any intention of pursuing that any longer. So I tend to agree with you. I think the Snyderverse is dead, and I wasn't that impressed with it. And I am not a Snyder hater. I always want to make that point. I own Watchmen, okay, and I own 300, and that's high praise for me because I don't own like a lot of media. Like I don't have a lot of physical media when it comes to movies, and I own 300. I love that movie, and I have Watchmen, and I really like that movie. Especially the beginning. I just think it's the way that beginning is shot is just amazing. I just love it. I want to do something like that, with my film career. Just love that the way that's shot. So I'm not a Snyder hater. I just don't like what he's done with DC. I haven't liked it. I haven't liked it at all. So I'm a little different in that regard. James says, I believe George Clooney said he was the worst Batman also. I believe you are right, James. George Clooney did own up to the fact that I think George Clooney took it even further where he was like, I ruined the franchise. Like I think he actually said something along those lines of I ruined the franchise, because at that point, even though you had multiple Batmans, it was all still kind of considered the same universe, right? They had the same Alfred. He was sort of the glue. So it was all kind of considered the same, even though they were different Batmen, if you will. But he was like, yeah, I killed the franchise, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for doing that. And it is amazing because I think most people would agree that George Clooney's a pretty darn good actor, but he just did not work as Batman at all. Just didn't. Asia says, give me Michael Keaton. He was the best fruit brain in Batman Returns. The best fruit brain. I wonder if that's a typo or if I'm kind of not getting something here. You might have to explain that to me, Asia. I'm not quite getting it. And then James said, didn't Snyder move to Netflix? I think we might have talked about that. I don't know if we talked about that in our Streaming Wars coverage. We haven't actually done a lot of Streaming Wars lately. It's funny because I've kind of felt like the Streaming Wars in a way is kind of like, it's kind of dead because it's kind of set. Like in my mind, I've mentioned this before. I feel like right now it's kind of like Netflix is obviously on top and Disney Plus is their competition. And everything else is just kind of like on the side, which is kind of funny because we're talking about HBO Max a lot right now, but it's like, I don't feel like people talk about HBO Max in the same terms they talk about Disney Plus and they talk about Netflix. So I'm not sure if we cover that. Do you remember if we cover that at all, Dave, about Snyder making a deal with Netflix?
Yeah, we did talk about Snyder making the deal with Netflix. That was part of why a lot of people seem to think that he wouldn't be doing anything additionally with HBO Max, is because he made that deal, or maybe that deal. Yeah, because he was doing a whole bunch of stuff with that Army of Darkness stuff he was doing over there at Netflix. They were doing an animated series, a prequel, like all kinds of other stuff. At least, yeah, something along those lines.
Cool. Yeah. So, like I said, James, it's been a while since we really did a lot of Streaming Wars coverage. So I kind of forget some of that stuff now. And to be honest, I think I've always been a big pusher for more Streaming Wars stuff. It's just like, I just haven't been seeing a lot of stuff that's really, grabbed my attention where I feel like there's some sort of big, game changer, that's happening, in that sphere right now. So that's why I think I've kind of let it go a little bit. Oh, here we go. So that was a typo. So Asia says, I'm using voice chat on the freeway. Asia, be careful. Be careful. Okay. Laugh out loud. In Batman Returns, Michael Keaton played his best Bruce Wayne. Okay, that's interesting. So you're talking about Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne in the original Batman versus Batman Returns. That's interesting.
Well, I'm
trying to think in my mind what was different,
And I'll I'll back Asia up too, because and as you know, Eric and I often don't agree on things. I feel like that um, Michael Keaton actually was a good Bruce Wayne. It's just a very different Bruce Wayne. Um, and that's one of the things I like about it. For the same reason that I really like, Dean Cain's version of Superman. It completely flies in the face of the version of Superman that most people like, because most people really like he's really Kal-El, um, that idea, and that Clark Kent is just a facade. I actually like the Lois and Clark version, where Clark is actually the real person, because that's how he was raised, that's what he knows, and he learns of Kal-El and begins to try and figure out what it means to be Kryptonian kind of later in life. I really like that particular interpretation. So and Keaton's interpretation of Bruce is very different. It's not what you would kind of expect, and he slides in and out of sometimes almost being kind of schizophrenic and confused about whether he is actually Bruce or he is Batman. And I like that aspect to the character. So, but that's just my personal opinion.
And I'm very superficial. I just don't think he's good looking enough to be a convincing Bruce Wayne. So that's where I'm coming from on that particular one. But I do think it's interesting because you and I have talked about the Superman side of that as well. And
Yeah.
I fall on I think what is a more traditional viewpoint with the top three DC characters being Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, that they really are Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? That's just the way that I've always seen them. But there's, like I said, the thing that's so awesome about Batman in particular is there's so many versions of Batman. You can just take your pick, right? Which you have, so it's like you can find the Batman that you want at this point, because there's so many people that have played Batman. There's so many different versions of Batman. You can find the one that you like and will fit your interpretation. Whether you think Batman is Bruce Wayne or Bruce Wayne is Batman or he's not, that kind of a thing, you can find your version that will satisfy you as a fan. I think, again, that's why one of the reasons that Batman's so popular, because there's like a Batman for everybody. Literally, there's like a Batman for everybody at this point. Hollywood says Schizanta, I'm trying to pronounce it right. Schizanta is looking good, Dave. It's looking good, and I agree. He is looking good. He's looking very good. Again, this is what it's really all about. This is the big reason for the format change, is we do want to show like original characters. We're obviously working on a project, but I think this is fun. This is supposed to be again. This is the Retro Rogues Live Christmas Eve Extravaganza. And we are giving you a brand new character from the mind of Dave Beatty, his gift to you, the Rogues Gallery, here at this Christmas season. So, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's creating new characters. James says he's been out of touch due to personal family issues. He's sorry. Hey, James, we totally understand that. That stuff pops up. We're glad you're here now, though. We're very glad that you're here now. We're glad to hear from you, especially on Christmas Eve. So we really appreciate that. Asia mentions that Keaton has that Moon Knight flavor in Batman Returns. And I think that's exactly what you were saying, right, Dave? Is that sort of that schizophrenia that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just, I just like that, it's just a very different interpretation. It kind of goes back to that idea, Adam West, Bruce Wayne and Batman, even though I know it's campy and at times silly, is very much your classic hero, and one of the things that I really like about Keaton's, version of Batman is that, he is at times, it seems like, still kind of, figuring out what it means, to be this hero. Sometimes he doesn't know exactly where the line is drawn, in terms of, how to be the best hero, or how to be in that moment. And I like that. I really like that. And I don't know. There's just something about Keaton's version of Batman that has always just really appealed to me. even though I know it is very, very different from the comic book, or even the more classic, animated interpretations. It just has always appealed to me. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Rep brings the point of take your pick with the Joker as well. And yeah, the Joker has gotten to that point where there is like a Joker for all seasons. At this point, Dave and I really like the Joker film, but I mentioned when we did that review, which by the way, again, a lot of our stuff is archived on the Facebook, on the YouTube. You can go back and look at these reviews. We were talking about the Joker. I really love the movie, and Dave did as well. But one thing that I was mentioning was, well, I don't know though how Joker, and actually Dave, you brought it up too. Is like we were kind of like, I don't know how well this Joker would really fit in, like if in the wider world of even with Batman. Like
yeah,
Dave, I remember you mentioned that it felt like if Batman shows up, it's just like he's beating up a mentally ill person.
yep,
So it's kind of interesting because we love that film, and I especially love it as a standalone film. I'm actually very concerned about the sequel talk that I've heard, and we've covered that on the show. Because I feel as a standalone film, it really is like art. Like it's really a character study. That's how it was pitched. That's how I heard about it. Like that's the way they always said this is like a character study, and I thought it was great that way. But I don't know if he would fit. Now, for one that would fit that I thought was really interesting is like Heath Ledger's, version of the Joker, which I thought was radically different than how I understood the character. And I
right,
was very shocked that Heath Ledger was able to pull it off. And I love that version. But again, being such a big fan of the animated series, I think when we did our Joker character study, we did a whole big Joker thing where we talked about all the different Jokers. We even got some really obscure ones from different animated versions of the Joker. And I think ultimately I was like, it's Mark Hamill for me. I just love that. That's like my definitive Joker. But again,
and
there's a Joker for all seasons.
and if you're interested to check those out, definitely check them out on the replay because actually, Hugo Strange actually was a special guest for both of those
That's right.
episodes, and actually from his office in Arkham Asylum actually helped us to compare and contrast these actor portrayals versions of the Joker to the actual real
To the real Joker.
Joker.
He was
Yeah,
giving
he
us the
was.
perspective of how these guys compare to the real Joker. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that was
definitely,
a fun
definitely
episode.
check that out.
That was a fun episode. And actually, I think it took us 2 episodes to do that. I
It
think
did.
it
It
took
did.
us
It was pretty
because
intense.
we went all the way back to The Man Who Laughs. Right, we went
Yep.
all the way back to the sort of the genesis, which a lot of people are not aware of that. But we actually even talked about The Man Who Laughs. So another one to check out on one of the replays. And Jane talking about Santa here. He says, it looks like he's been eating protein bars instead of cookies.
Well, he is Schizanta. He's not just Santa. He is Schizanta.
He's Schizanta. That's right.
Yeah.
A
So,
brand new original character here on the Retro Rogues Live. Christmas Eve Extravaganza. Brand new character, folks. Brand new character. I mean, what else can you ask for? Really, what else can you ask for? And then Mott said, looks like Kirby Tees has a holiday shirt. Sounds like a suggestion there,
Oh. Well, I guess it could be. I hadn't thought about that. Idea. Schizanta.
James mentions his big jokers are Mark Hamill and Cesar Romero.
Yeah.
Interesting choice. I've always thought Cesar Romero actually did a really good job as Joker because he was so zany. And I always really liked Cesar Romero's version of the Joker. I thought he was cool. Kind of weak, but he was cool. You know what I mean? So, and Rhett says his personal favorite is Ledger. Ledger's his personal favorite as far as Joker goes.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for the artwork, everybody. I think there's your Schizanta.
So there you go, folks.
Here to save Christmas
in all of its glory. And again, Dave's Christmas gift to all of you, an original creation on this Christmas Eve extravaganza. We have Schizanta, which I think he turned out awesome. We do have some comments here. Robert McVeigh says it looks great. Hollywood Jackson says he's been bench pressing reindeer.
Yeah.
I dig that. And Asia says, what will he give me if I sit on his lap? Will he give you? Indeed, Asia. Indeed. Mott says it looks great. And Jane says it's awesome. And I agree. It is awesome.
Thank you, everyone. It was fun to put this together for you all live on the show. It was kind of interesting because Eric and I were just kind of snowballing. There you go, snowballing ideas. And I was just kind of like, I was like, this might be kind of a fun thing. We've talked about doing a mashup before, so yeah.
Mashups are always fun, especially like I always think of like in cosplay, people do like some of my favorite cosplay is when people do a creative mashup. Like one random one I remember was there was like a Jedi Jack, like Jack from Jack in the Box. So he had perfect Jedi clothing and he just had the Jack head. You know what I mean? I was just like, that's creative. Yeah. That's fun. You know what I mean? So I've always liked mashups. I think they're a lot of fun. They show creativity, as opposed to just, doing the regular character. You know what I mean? So it's fun. It's fun and it shows creativity and, it's cool stuff, James says he would hate to be on that naughty list. Indeed. Yeah. Schizanta is going to kick your butt, man, if you're on the naughty list. Because that's Schizanta we're talking about. And actually, let's face it, the original Captain Marvel, he was always like a really good guy too. So it's like, they don't like bad guys. These are like good guys, like really good guys. There's no dark side. You know what I mean? These are just good guys. You know what I mean? So they don't like the naughty people.
And what's interesting too is I know those of you can't really see this, but actually it's interesting because right above my desk, literally right within my eye line, is from the original Filmation Shazam cartoon, is actually a original animation cell of Captain Marvel actually in flight, actually with the background painting. It's like right there. That's right there.
Awesome.
It sits above my desk and has for years and years and years and years.
And I always like to mention that the original Captain Marvel, the otherwise known as Shazam to many of you, that was my dad's favorite superhero. It's actually my brother's favorite superhero. So, grew up with my brother having a lot of the Silver Age Captain Marvel comics, which I think already by then they were calling it Shazam. But to me, that's Captain Marvel. Always will be Captain Marvel, not the Marvel version of Captain Marvel. I'm sorry. The Captain Marvel is Shazam, you know what I mean? And actually, Shazam is the wizard. I just have to say that Shazam is the wizard. So you know what I mean? It's just it irks me sometimes.
And it is interesting to me too, because I know this is definitely not Uncle Dudley, but I am getting some Uncle Dudley and his Shazam Bago vibe off of this drawing here. For those of you that are diehard old school Shazam Captain Marvel fans, so you know what I'm
James
talking
had
about.
a comment along those lines earlier that I wasn't able to get to, or he said that.
Okay,
he actually said that. I didn't say it but James said something about that. So Robert says, "Merry Christmas to everyone." Indeed, Merry Christmas. That's the whole point of this on this Christmas Eve extravaganza. We definitely want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Mats has a good question though. He says, "Who are the villains of Schizanta?"
I would assume the villains are like, if we're going to go Rankin Bass, it has to be some version of a mashup of Black Adam and maybe the Heat Miser, and maybe Jack Frost somehow mixed with maybe Iback. So there you go. Taking some old school Captain Marvel villains and mashing them with Rankin Bass holiday villainous characters. Because whenever I think about the Rankin Bass, I always feel like the two greatest villains is the Jack Frost, which represents the cold, and then the Heat Miser, who represents the heat. That's there we go. Torch Miser.
Torch Miser is what Mott says. And James had said coal for Mr. Mind.
There you go. There you go. Very cool.
Mr. Freeze Miser is another one Mott says. Hey, Jane's got one. The Grinchinator. I dig it. The Grinchinator. Of course, the Picardinator could be his villain. I mean, the Picardinator could be anybody's villain, I think. You know?
Yeah.
He could be a villain's villain. Like, if you have a villain, like, and they have, you know, someone that they really hate and it's worse than them.
Oh, yeah.
The Picardinator would always, like,
Picardinator.
You know what I mean? He would always top it. As the most evil, insidious thing, you know, that's ever existed. So,
oh goodness, yeah.
And James says, "Mr. Mind smash with Charlie in the box." So,
all right, very cool.
I think I think we're good for the outro at this point.
All right, okay, there we go. All right, cool. All right. We're going to go ahead and go to the outro. Thank you for all the comments, everyone. Greatly appreciated. And I hope you enjoyed this Schizanta character here created for you on this Retro Live Christmas Eve Extravaganza. So I want to thank you for watching this episode. My name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. If you're curious to learn more about what occupies a lot of my time, you definitely head over to KirbyTees.com. That's KIRBYTS.com. Kirby Tees is actually my t-shirt company. Got a lot of fun things over there. It's kind of probably too late for Christmas gifts at this point, but New Year coming up. Maybe there's something coming up that you might find something great that would make a great gift over there at Kirby Tees. We also do custom t-shirt printing as well, but we also have the Brains of Magic by Sarah Aerosmith, the Skeletor collaboration between myself and the Janimal. A lot of other fun things, as well as Retro Rogues Live t-shirts. We'd like to encourage you to go over there and consider purchasing a Retro Rogues Live t-shirt and supporting what we do here on the show. We would greatly appreciate your support. But enough about that. I want to I want to thank, as always, my great co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander, for, as always, providing his unique perspective, point of view, and commentary on all these fun things we like to talk about here on the Retro Rogues Live. Eric, please tell the folks hopefully watching or listening at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. You can reach me there at BassGod14. That's at BASSGOD14. That's also the official YouTube and the official Twitch account. So if you comment on any of those platforms, more likely than not, you're going to be getting a response from me. My DMs are wide open on the Twitter. In fact, the Rogues Gallery often reaches out to me and will tell me about an article or something they heard about, and I will be able to cover it on the show. I love to cover topics that are actually suggested from the Rogues Gallery. And also, oftentimes, the Rogues Gallery will let me know about something that's going on that I did that just was completely under my radar. So I really appreciate that. And I definitely enjoy it when people reach out to me in that way. Hollywood Jackson, he says, Merry Christmas, everyone. Definitely a Merry Christmas to you, Hollywood. Motz also says Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And Jane says Merry Christmas to all and great show. And with that, we'll go ahead and leave Jane with the last word.